When Queen Elizabeth II died, it was her beekeeper's responsibility to go and knock on all of her beehives and let the bees know that she was dead. So he dutifully went and knocked on all of their hives and explained to them that their mistress was dead, but that the king would be looking after them now. And that's a bit weird, don't you think? And the reason this is the case is because there's a long tradition in Western Europe that you tell the bees your family news. And that would include births, marriages, deaths, etc. And in some parts of Europe, that's just now remembered as you tell them when people have died in the family. But why? Well, it seems that bees are considered to be messengers to go across the realms. So, I mean, my guess would be that they're letting your ancestors know, or other members of the family far away. But they're messengers and they can travel between realms, apparently. So, I'm Pharaoh, and I have come to my bees. I knew that this planet had these kinds of honeycombs. And if you look around a planet that has honeycombs for long enough, you will find at least one asset that has these little tiny bees. You can't scan them. They're just part of the asset. Usually they're around one of these honeycombs. So they might be around one of these. But on this planet, they're around these pot things. And so I named this base where this planet is Honeypot. Also partly because you can get the there's a flower cat over there, and you can get their sticky nectar. I can't remember what it is you get from them. Let's remind myself. Nectar. So yeah, you can get nectar from those. So a handy place on this particular save to get that nectar. And also, if you wanted to, just collect loads of sticky honey, because you just shoot these. It doesn't say that it's going to... It says carbon, but you also get sticky honey when you get rid of them. And now my bees are gone. So never mind. I didn't get round to telling them the news from No Man's Sky, which is that we have the new emoji. Sean has just... well, he hasn't just posted. I'm a little bit late to the party. I wasn't around to make a video when he posted it. But he's posted the bee emoji. And so that got me thinking, so what do bees symbolise? And I've seen a few people speculating about what bees might mean in No Man's Sky. But I thought I'd approach it from that other angle of the symbolism of bees and work out perhaps from there. Because one of the things that Sean quite often does is he will post something based on a word. So he might have a word in mind, and then he will post an emoji that best fits that word. For example, drone, or hive, or bee, but I can't see it being bee really. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. It could be about insects. He could have just thought insects and then thought, okay, bee. But I thought I would kind of analyse a few of the different possibilities in terms of what that kind of pre-thought before he selected the emoji could have been. So the most common thing these days that bees usually indicate is hard work, perseverance, discipline, kind of the positive traits of just kind of knuckling down and getting the job done. So you might sometimes see people that wear like a little badge, or there might be symbols for certain industrial towns and cities that usually indicate a bee. And you see this in Greece as well. It often symbolises just hard work and dedication and discipline, or is a shorthand for industry in general. So that makes me think, in No Man's Sky terms, industry. We don't have an awful lot of industry. We have a bit. It feels like industry has kind of taken a bit of a back seat. We don't need money as much anymore, I don't think. I've been saying for quite a long while that money is nowhere near as important in No Man's Sky as it used to be. We can kind of get a lot of the things that we used to spend money on from guilds and other places that we didn't really have that option before. So industry could be interesting, but is it really necessary? Well, the other question with industry was, what about automation? Could we have industry that allows us to just use our refiners automatically, for instance? People have often asked for that. It might be nice. And complete overhaul of refiners and industry in that way might do away with duplication glitching. That could be interesting. For instance, I've often thought the easiest way to do away with duplication glitching is to get rid of the personal refiner. I'm not sure how much Hello Games really want to get rid of duplication glitching. I don't think they see it as a major problem. Otherwise, they probably would have been a little bit more dedicated to trying to remove it from the game. They have made it harder. Nowadays, if you wanted to use that, as you probably really wouldn't want to be placing it just there on the ground, because in order to duplicate by placing one on top of it, it has to be really very accurate. It used to be any old way. You could just do it crosswise, and you can't do that anymore. You used to be able to just put the middle in near the middle, and that would work. And that's not how it works anymore. You really have to perfectly align it. And quite why they allow us to still perfectly align it is a little bit beyond me. But in other ways, they couldn't really stop us making it totally perfect with glitches, because we could just Y glitch, for instance. So I guess they might have given up on the idea. One of the issues with No Man's Sky in general, I'm going a bit off the point here, is that everything is based on exact. Let me just get rid of this a second. For some reason, it wasn't deleting, but there you go. One of the issues with No Man's Sky is that everything is based on exact location. And so duplication is always going to happen, because if you put two refiners of any type in exactly the same spot, then the game sees them as the same refiner, and it just assumes they've got the same things in them. And it would be quite tricky, not impossible, but quite tricky to kind of stop that happening. And it could kind of cause a few problems. I sometimes mention this in passing, but programmers like to avoid too many exceptions, too many things to say, in this case, this changes the way the game works. Because that has implications when you come to change the game later, and you might forget that you've got that exception in place, or it might surprise them that something that they're doing, say just with industry for instance, suddenly isn't working because they forgot about that exception when they were doing their new rules. It's never a really good idea to have a rule that says this is always the case except in this specific circumstance. Although No Man's Sky has a lot of those now. It started to use them from Beyond onwards, but they probably try to keep them to a minimum, I would imagine. So yes, industry. So did that put that thing back there? No. So while I look around to see if I can tell the bees properly, we'll talk about industry. What we have at the moment are two different methods of mining things. We've got hotspot mining, and we've got mining that you would do at a deposit. In most of my saves that have started since guilds became a little bit more useful, I don't even bother with general mining unless I really need something. So let me just see if I can find a deposit. There's a deposit. So if I wanted some pyrite, then I might either position a save beacon here because I've already got a base on this planet, or I might position a base near here and then put an autonomous mining unit on it. And whereas once upon a time these used to be really unreliable, and if you walked away from them they would stop working, nowadays they're really quite reliable, and I've had no problems with them at all for quite a long while. So now if I came back to this spot later, especially if, say for instance, I placed down a save beacon, maybe coloured it a specific colour, then I could come back here and get that pyrite at a later date. I could put 2 or 3 on the deposit, depending on how large the deposit was. I don't need to worry about hotspots and putting down industrial mining units. Yeah, if you're in a ship that's got a hover ability, like for instance this particular Iron Vulture ripoff, then you can usually spot the bees if you're just slow enough. I'm looking for the pot asset, but with bees flying over them. There's one. That was actually quite quick. They can be quite rare. So I'm supposed to knock on the hive. That'll do. Sean Murray's posted an emoji about bees. I thought you might like to know. There you go. They now know. So yeah, I can imagine a kind of factory style system where we have automation. I'm not sure if No Man's Sky really needs it, but it could be fun to set up factories. I'm not convinced that that's what this emoji is all about. Now, another thing that bees often symbolize is community, or cooperation, or teamwork, or generally getting together and doing things. If Sean was thinking community, he might think, okay, what symbolizes community? I can't think of many words that would symbolize community. So, in other words, I can't think of many words he might be thinking that would mean that. Maybe colony, but that would have other implications, and we'll come on to that in a bit, maybe. Community could mean some kind of multiplayer update, and I have been saying for a very long while that what No Man's Sky really needs is a multiplayer overhaul. So, I mean, he could just call it No Man's Sky Community and really go to town on community stuff, maybe give us some player guilds, maybe give us better guild systems in general, maybe give us ways to claim regions so that we can build communities in regions, maybe give us better multiplayer in general, so when we make up a fire team, for instance, it doesn't keep disconnecting as often. That might be outside of their control a little bit, because they do tend to use an Azure server. Oh, hello, he's come to have a look. Hi. I love the way they just do that sometimes. They just kind of say, I'm going to watch you. Anyway. So yeah, we all know that there are major problems with multiplayer. We know that it will disconnect us. We know that it will have problems even connecting us, putting us in the same place sometimes. So that could do with a bit of a rework. They use Azure servers, as I think I was just saying, and those kind of facilitate a peer-to-peer connection. So everything is very much dependent on the individual people's connection to the internet. It could even be dependent on their platform, because some platforms have different access to the internet, and so that particular ability can be limited. They could potentially have a more open system so that anybody could go online. I'm not quite sure how that would work, but I think you can bypass certain platforms, community online systems in games. I'm not sure. Don't know enough about consoles. But in general, that could be a really good thing, and I'd love to see that, and some actual content around that, better multiplayer missions, all that kind of stuff would be great. No Man's Sky Colony could be a name for that. I can't help thinking that colony would imply something else. It might imply multiplayer building, multiplayer larger settlements, and that would be really cool as well, but it would be more specific. It wouldn't necessarily require a total overhaul of multiplayer, but it could be part of it, I guess. Or there could be a or there could be an expedition that's about colonizing that is just the theme of the story as opposed to an actual mechanic. So that could work. Now, another thing that bees could symbolize is prosperity. I think that's probably not going to be a thing, because prosperity is kind of covered reasonably well in No Man's Sky. And as I was saying earlier, it feels like a lot of the money side of things is kind of less important now. Now, they could overhaul that. They could make money more important again. They could rebalance the economy, rebalance the game totally. Maybe it does need that a little bit, because it does feel like any progression based on accumulating wealth is a little bit redundant these days. So maybe they could do that. But I have a feeling that prosperity, growth, abundance, these are all kind of things that suggest progression, and I don't feel like they're going to make a major change to progression. And then that brings us to the last one, or kind of the first one in the what I started off talking about, which is kind of wisdom, sacred knowledge, traveling between worlds, sending messages to other realms. That could be interesting, and that would definitely be an element that kind of ties in with things that are going on. For instance, the Void Mother. The Void Mother was Korvax Prime. She was technically the Queen of the Hive Mind. And so that could suggest some kind of Void Mother story, maybe to round off that story. I'm always in two minds about whether or not the story even needs rounding off, because she's back now and the purple systems have come back, and that was a resolution in a way. And if it was up to me, I would prefer they started developing some of the lore from the other races. Like, let's have some more stuff about the first spawn. Let's have some stuff about Huracanal. I never know if that's the proper pronunciation, but that'll do. Those kinds of stories could be developed further. There's stuff in the Colossal Archive lore that suggests that there's more to it than meets the eye. And that's kind of how we had the first hints of there was more to the Korvax than met the eye. And so do we really need to know more about the Korvax and the autophage? I'm not 100% convinced. We could maybe develop that again later. There's no reason to think that Hello Games will completely stop thinking about the meta-narrative. That could be something that they develop in expeditions in the future. I would imagine that as the game is being less and less developed by Hello Games, an easy win for them would be to just drop expeditions a few times a year, like they generally do now, but without all of the other update material. So it gives us something to work with without having to do major work on the game. And so they could easily develop things like the Void Mother stuff in future expeditions. Whereas stuff they haven't really brought out and developed, it's just sitting there waiting for interesting stuff. So unfortunately, I can't see how the bee would be related to either of the other races. It can only really, I think, be related to the Korvax, or maybe the autophage if they were going to make their own new hive mind. I don't imagine they would. They seem very individualistic. They seem to be quite pleased that they're not part of the hive mind anymore. But there has always been this kind of suggestion that the Void Mother and the autophage are not necessarily on the same side. And some of this comes from the lore here. If you read all of the lore from the terminal, wherever, there it is. No, it's not. Where is it? There it is. If you read the terminal lore, you get a better idea of some of this. So access logs. I think I'm probably on the last one, but this is a different save, so I might not have completely gone through it all. Nope, we've still got some information here. A Korvax and a Gek fled their people, hands held in the void. They inhabited an anomaly, a meeting place in the stars, a nexus, a place of hope. We left it alone. We did not interfere. We just watched them and wondered. So that's obviously Polo and Nada. And there's quite a few little tidbits in these kinds of bits of lore, and that could be somewhere where they could just expand some of the lore into an expedition. They could expand it into a new storyline that's tagged on the end of the Void Mother, They Who Return stuff. It could be an interesting thing to do, and I would definitely welcome it. Whether that means we'd end up going to another realm, as I said, bees can travel backwards and forwards to other realms. That would be possible. We might end up going to other realms. There is this hint from the two pet. I can't show you the pets on this particular save because I didn't develop the pets. But the pets from Oceanus, two of them, we can't actually get to lay eggs, and the suggestion is they come from different biomes that we've never seen before. So it could be a bug and we could suddenly be able to get them to lay eggs later, or it could be that there are some realms that they haven't shown us yet. So that could be cool. I can't think of any other lore that would really fit it apart from Sentinels, and of course that could indicate drones. So these are drones, and I mean they even look a bit like bees, so it could be something to do with Sentinel drones. What I would really like to see, and a lot of people have asked for this, but I've always thought maybe it wouldn't happen, is really expanding on these Sentinel pillars. Actually have an underground nest of Sentinels underground here that we can clear out. Some kind of dungeon on planets. That would be really cool. The other thing they could do is have some kind of realm stroke dungeon that we have to clear out in the boundary failures. In the lore, it suggests that the drones are always kind of ready to launch themselves to any place they might be needed from another realm, potentially either through the portal network, or that may have been misinterpreted. That was certainly part of the storyline that Apollo seemed to be suggesting, that he thought that they were coming through the portals. There's also a bit of stuff tied up here with Null, and whether Null was actually responsible for the Sentinels turning on an entire galaxy and destroying it, or an entire other realm, really. We could see that war come to us. That could befall this one through the activities of the Travellers. We may bring it upon us, and we might get an extra manifestation of the drones, and that would be really cool if it was something that we had some power over. So you couldn't imagine that happening across the board. Suddenly Sentinels being much more active everywhere, because that would disrupt normal progression. And we've already had expeditions where they've been more active. But you could imagine having to go to specific places to clear out drone nests, and in a better multiplayer mission, for instance. So currently the multiplayer mission that takes place here at these Sentinel pillars is quite basic, and the one that we get at the Nexus. But yeah, we could be asked to come here and go through some kind of dungeon. We could be asked to go to a boundary failure and clear out some Sentinels from the other realm. That could be really cool. I can't really think of many other things that really fit the game. I mean, there are other words that potentially could make Sean choose a bee. He could be just thinking along the lines of having more insects in the game. We have quite a lot of insects or insect-like things in the game, so it doesn't strike me as something that they would say, oh, what this game really needs in our next update is more insects. Maybe they could develop these smaller creatures more, but again, do we really need that? It's not a major problem. I've seen some people suggest it could be to do with herding animals. We do have herding animals, just they don't necessarily all act together unless you force them to. If you ride a particular creature in a herd, sometimes you can get the rest of the herd to follow you. I haven't tried that for so long, so I don't know if it still works, but you could get that to happen. Which of these things do I think is most likely? I would love to think multiplayer, and the reason I think that's likely is because of Light No Fire coming along, and I feel like they really need to test their multiplayer options before Light No Fire is released. You would think that Hello Games would want to release Light No Fire with a better and more stable version of multiplayer. Possibly with more players, although a lot of the images we've seen show the same number of players. But it would be nice to think that it would be a more detailed, more usable, more robust version of multiplayer. And if they're going to do that, I would expect them to test it in No Man's Sky before the anniversary. Just because I feel like around after the anniversary at least, I feel like we might then get news about Light No Fire, and I feel like they'd like to be able to point to Hello Games and say, look, we've just made multiplayer a lot better, and there's your example, go and have a look at that if you want to see what Light No Fire might be like, or at least to give people confidence that want to buy Light No Fire but have never really played No Man's Sky, that oh yeah, I've heard that people in No Man's Sky are really happy with the multiplayer work they've been doing recently. That's a good sign. So yeah, for all those reasons, my hope, and something that I've been predicting for about a year now, is better multiplayer leading up to the 10th anniversary. So what do you think? I mean, I might be completely wrong, and I've got no way of telling. I don't know what's in Sean's mind. He might just be bringing bees into the game for all we know. Rideable bees that we can have as pets and are really good in the Xeno arena. Unlikely, but you never know what he's going to do. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments. And in the meantime, I've been Pharaoh. Travel well, and goodbye for now.